Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Scrum Wednesday. This time we have a pleasure of having our guest, Martin Hinshelwood. I always mispronounce it, typically. Well, what to say about him? He's quite a character. He's a Scrum.org trainer who can teach all the courses that Scrum.org has to offer, Microsoft MVP, and also a pro Kanban trainer. And as you can see behind him, an avid fellow board gamer, which is always, the life of the party whenever you meet him. With that said, he will be talking today about Taylorism, Luddites, and other stuff. Basically, a few things that I picked up over years talking with him and reading his articles. So, Martin, welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. It's always a pleasure.
So, want to fire up the presentation, or do you want
Yeah, I
us
can do
anything?
that.
Whatever works for you.
Well, it's whatever works for you as well. Let me turn off the Swedish. For some reason, I enabled, the live translation that you can do in PowerPoint. I don't know if you've seen that. You can turn on live translation bar at the bottom, and it turns on whenever I start a presentation. I have no idea how to turn it off now. So I always get Swedish coming up, and then I have to go figure out how to stop it. So let me share my screen. So this is, I guess this presentation can be as short or as long as you like. The important thing is to generate some discussions and some understanding. I'm sure many the people that I recognize will probably have seen my presentation before, so that's cool. It's on my YouTube channel, but sometimes it's always nice having that as part of a conversation. So I'm fighting with Zoom here because it's an inadequate tool. So let me just Boris and I were having a chat about that earlier, while Bogdan was unable to connect. So okay. I changed the title for you, Bogdan. I put the Luddites in there as well. I definitely like that word. Does it translate well? Or yeah, cool. I do like that word. I have a couple of words in here that are actually very difficult to translate. You'll be able to tell me whether they're difficult to translate, I guess. I'll mention them when I get to them. I've got an interesting data point here. Anybody familiar with this data point? 81% of all development teams say that they're agile. I see Boris's face. He's like, what the hell? There's no way that's true. Right? And I agree with you. I agree with you, Boris, because I would say that almost all of them are lying. They're selling us a big stinky poo, right? Because the data that the same survey that says that 81% of all development shops say that they're agile also says only 22% of them do short iterations, right? So that's a big steaming pile of nastiness. It also says that only 16% of them have an ordered backlog, right? That's more stinkiness. What else have we got on our Agile BS list? Only 13% do retrospectives. Right? Do these sound like Agile teams to you? A little bit. But Bogdan, they've got their work items in Jira and they're standing up every day for 15 minutes. Doesn't that mean we're agile?
As much as a lipstick on a pig.
Yeah. So this data is from Forrester Research. It's a little bit older, but trying to get a hold of some of this stuff can be expensive. But I didn't even minimum viable product 5%, prioritized backlog 16%, pair programming 15%. Lots of dysfunctional behaviors going on here. And actually, when I put this presentation together originally, I went searching for an image that represented how I felt based on the number of organizations that I've seen. Any of you that are in the consulting space will know exactly how I feel about this. I literally just found this online as I went looking for it. Most companies you admire are total shit shows behind the scenes. It's the reason that if any of you have ever done consulting or contracting or worked with a bank, you would probably never have an account with that bank because I would rather have an account with a bank I don't know is a complete shit show and could pretend that maybe they know what they're doing, but we kind of know they're all the same, aren't they? They all kind of suck. So why is it so hard for us to change the way we do things, right? There seems to be this innate fear of something different. There seems to be this weird tilt towards doing things in a way that doesn't seem to suit the work, right? So where does it come from? And the elephant in the room is this thing here. But there's a mountain standing behind the elephant, right? We think that waterfall is the big nasty, but waterfall is only a symptom of the problem. Our problems don't stem from waterfall. Waterfall is also part of a bigger thing, and I'm calling it Taylorism, but I will explain what that means so that we all have a reference point. Something that I've always found, and it's actually one of the reasons that I failed my last year of university, right? I had to do a class called Quantitative Methods at university as part of my computer science degree. And in quantitative methods, there's a whole bunch of stuff around statistics. And I would always ask why. Why does it work this way? How does this work? And the teacher would just throw up her arms and say, you need to go and do statistics at university for 4 years to figure that out. I don't have time to explain it to you here. I like to understand why something is true, because that helps us maybe figure out how to do something about it, right? So in order to figure this out, we have to go back in time, right? We have to go back in time about 130 years to the 1890s. This was just before something major changed in our world. And it was, a time of lots of innovation, lots of small inventors just coming up with stuff and figuring it out. People spent a lot more time with their family because they generally lived with multiple generations of their family in the same house. So you'd be in the same house with your grandmother. Your parents could go off to work because your grandparents would be looking after you, or whoever was in the house. And when you did go to work, you worked very closely with the customer. That picture I have on the right there is just a cobbler making shoes with his apprentice there, learning how to make shoes. Maybe his son, or just maybe somebody who's learning the trade, the craft. But it was a trade. It was a craft. That person is a crafts person. They are engaging with the customer regularly. The customer walks into the store and talks to them. That's an old dude, so he's probably lived in that village for a long time, right? He probably made the customer's previous pair of shoes, maybe the pair of shoes before that, right? He's going to make the next pair of shoes for that customer. He probably drinks with that customer in the pub at the end of the day. He knows where the chafe points are in the shoes that customer has. He knows whether that customer is the local police officer walking the beat, or the farmer stomping through the fields, and knows what the requirements are for that person. That kind of makes sense. It's a very interesting time. We're a lot closer to the customer. We could see and talk to and sense our customer. But then the Industrial Revolution came along, And it was definitely a time where lots of people made lots of money. Lots of people got jobs. Lots of people got pulled out of poverty. Lots of people are still in poverty. We scaled up the way we work. Yeah, instead of making one of something, we had to make lots of something. But the way we do that now is very different. We in general, depending on the cost of labor, we use robots. We use mechanization to help build lots of things. But in those days, they didn't really have a lot of mechanization. They didn't have that capability. So what did we have that we could use? We had people. And I don't know if you've noticed, but people kind of suck at doing monotonous work. When our brain's not engaged, we tend to struggle. But I'd be interested if you can look at these pictures and tell me what they're making. Can you see what they're making, Bogdan? It actually doesn't matter how close you get. I have no idea what they're making. I zoomed in. The only thing the people on the left look like maybe they're making some kind of wheel, and the people in the middle are to the right are looking like they're maybe making some part of a clock. But who knows? It could be something completely different. Does it matter to the people doing the work? If your job is putting 5 bolts on that round thing, does it matter what it's for? Nope, probably doesn't matter for it's what it's for. It's not something that really interests you. You've been told how to do your job. You know exactly what to do. So there's a huge difference between these two worlds. You've got the craftsman on the left building a product, custom product directly for the customer. And then you get mass market on the right. Does anybody, there's a really good children's book by a fellow called Roald Dahl. And he wrote a book called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Does anybody remember that? Does anybody remember what Charlie's dad's job was before he got made redundant by a robot? Anybody remember? It's a very interesting job. His job was screwing the top on toothpaste bottles. That was his job. Sounds like awesome fun, doesn't it? Would you like to do that every day? I don't think so. Right? So when you have that sort of thing to do, could you imagine, you could imagine your first 10 minutes screwing the top on toothpaste bottles might be interesting, right? But your first 10 days, your next 10 years, yeah, that's what's your brain going to do, Mario? Yeah, it's gonna disengage from the process. Oh, there's 2 Marios, in fact. I just noticed there was 2 Marios. Mario Z and Mario P. Your brain disengages. It goes, sod this, I'm off. I'm gonna think about something else while this is happening over here. So something happens when people disengage. This is where we get to those 2 words that I think are difficult to translate. But have you heard loaf and malinger? I have been unable to translate them into German, so I don't know about other languages. There's loaf and malinger in French because, you know, French people, but it's a British, very British expression. So it really comes down to work more slowly than one's capacity. Have you ever seen there's a thing that happens in the UK. We're very known for it in the UK. Our work ethic sucks in the UK, right? Is you get the workmen come out to redo your road, and they dig up a bit of the road. They get there at 7 o'clock in the morning, lay out the cones, dig up a little bit, and then go, time for breakfast. Let's go find somewhere to have our breakfast and a cup of tea, because, you know, the work's shit, so let's go do something else. And then they come back and they dig a little bit more, and then they're like, we need another cup of tea, right? That's to work more slowly than one's capacity. You don't really care about the work. You don't really care about the job. You don't really care about the company. all you care about is your paycheck, and you'll do as little as you possibly can to get your paycheck. So this was an impediment to productivity, right? What sort of things might you do, right, to put a stop to this loss of productivity? What might you do?
Well, be stringent about it.
Be strict. Yeah, being strict is a good thing. Remember, this is 130 years ago. I don't think the words PC had been invented. Certainly not union, right? So there weren't a lot of protections for employees back then. Mario P, what might you do? I did not know that you had an abundance of helium where you are. This is just, you can just talk for the rest of the time. That would be awesome. So, yes, Mario Z, do you want to?
Yeah, well, if you want productivity in that kind of setup, maybe we should set up some norms on minimum level of productivity that is.
Yeah, we could have a minimum level of productivity. Yeah, because
Yeah.
this is not a skilled job, right?
Yeah.
You can have any idiot do this. So
Yeah.
each person who already has a job, there's probably 10 people waiting to take their job if that job should be made available.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we as the employer, we don't care which person has that job. Doesn't matter to us, right? We just want the fastest people. So there was a gentleman at the time called Frederick Winston Taylor. That's where this Taylorism comment comes from. And Taylor, he was like the management consultant 130 years ago. And he coined this phrase, and I think it's really important. I think it goes to the fundamentals of why most traditional management practices suck. And this is, hardly a competent worker can be found who does not devote a considerable amount of time to working out just how slowly they can work and still convince their employer that they're going at a good pace. Right? This fundamental management assumption is you as an employee are going to try and not work. Right? Have you ever worked for somebody who has that attitude that they every decision they make is based on the assumption that you're trying to defraud them of money? Right? We want to work less. I've worked for loads of companies and loads of managers that are, the zero trust environments where there's where that happens. So Taylor came up with some ideas to help prevent it. Probably some of the things you already thought of. Developing standard methods to perform each job. We need to come up with best practices. If you've ever heard that term, best practices. Divide workers into appropriate ability-based groups. Well, we're going to have a sales team and a marketing team and a team screwing the top on the toothpaste bottle and a team doing coding and a team doing testing. Yeah. And then inside of that competency group, we're going to train people in those standard methods that we come up with. But we don't want them to think because we've decided how they're going to do the work, because we're the managers and they're the robots that happen to be human. So we're going to remove thinking and we're going to plan everything they do. And then because, they're going to suck at their job because they're going to try and not do it, we're going to create a bunch of wage incentives for them to work faster. That maybe sound like some things you might have heard of.
Oddly familiar in 21st century.
And frustratingly familiar in the 21st century. somebody came after Taylor, and you will recognize his name. Then who's the what's the most nefarious project management thing? Gantt, Henry Gantt. He followed Frederick Winston Taylor's work, and he used scientific analysis to try and improve things. And he came up with the task and bonus system. That's who we have to thank for the task and bonus system, as well as the Gantt chart, which we all love. But the task and bonus system, creating a basic wage based on expected low performance. So we're expecting every employee will work less than they can, and they only get their bonus if they work hard. And then, you know, Mario is in charge of all of us. So we're going to, if we perform well, Mario gets a bonus, but if we perform badly, Mario doesn't get a bonus. How do you think that makes managers treat the people that work for them? I lose money if you don't work hard. Think about many managers. I was going to say every manager you've worked with, but many managers you've worked with, and their motivation. What would their behavior be if this was true? And I think you'll see a lot of the management practices that a lot of managers use. I worked for a company called Agile. They're a generator manufacturer and a rental company. And they had a 50% bonus scheme. They deliberately paid less than about 20% less than you would expect to get paid for the particular job you were doing. It was like a deliberate thing, 20%. But they had a 50% bonus that in the 2 years I was there paid 37.5% based on company performance. That's a huge pot of money at the end of the year, right? But they did an interesting thing. They calculated it January to December, but you didn't get paid it until your April paycheck. So you're 4 months into the next cycle before they pay it. And if you're not there, you don't get it. And then you're 4 months in, so you don't leave beforehand because you want to get that 37.5%. And then you get there and you're like, I'm a quarter of the way into my next bonus. I just get handed this big amount of money, and a quarter of that I've already made, and I lose if I leave. In the UK, we call that golden handcuffs. Handcuffing you to the job. So you end up with a lot of people who don't want to be there, who stay purely because of the money. I've got an interesting thing here. Many of you might have gone to school in a school that kind of looked like this. It might have looked a little bit more modern than this, but might have looked something like this. Reward for fulfilled tasks. Everybody sits in rows. Everybody has to do the same thing at the same time. No talking and incentive-based learning. What's the difference between these two worlds? The modern school system, which that's actually what it's called the modern school system, but it was created 130 years ago. They just called it modern so that they could pretend that it was modern all the time. Is fundamentally in place and stays the same to create factory workers. My brother would say to create peons. Anybody that played World of Warcraft will, sorry, not World of Warcraft, the old Warcraft would know what I mean by that, but servants. That's what the school system's designed to create. People with just enough education to screw the top on toothpaste bottles, right? But not enough that you take the manager's job, because, you know, we don't want that. So these two fellows have a lot to answer for. I read an article the other day talking about how their techniques sucked the soul out of people's work. People don't care about the work anymore. And part of it was because they optimized for output, not outcome, because the outcome was known. If you're working on the Volkswagen production line in Germany, and I can't remember what's the Tiguan, the 4x4 thing, the small one. think it's called the Tiguan. I can't remember. Anyway, I'm probably saying it wrong. But one car comes off the production line every 60 seconds. Right? The outcome is known. We're getting a Tiguan. How can we optimize that production line to get more Tiguans? Maybe we want one coming off the production line every 58 seconds. How much more money will we make if we can sell that many cars? Right, optimizing for output. I guess where Mr. Gant went. And we know where Mr. Gant went after that. He went to Harvard and he started the first MBA. This is the graduating class of the first MBA from Harvard in 1908. This graduating class, yes, they're all men and yes, they're all white, right? These were the sons of all of the manufacturing owners of the time. Let's send them to this school. They'll learn these magical practices for managing people. And guess what? Taylorism spread like a virus all over the world. That was 1908. By the 1950s, this awesome thing had arisen: analysis, design, implementation, testing, and maintenance. Right? Using these same techniques that Taylor came up with to manage modern work. So there's our ability-based groups, people who are good at analysis. Let's just train them in analysis, and they just do that. By the way, this is part of the reason that you do one thing at university. You pick one subject, right? I did computer studies, right? I didn't have philosophy as well, because they only want you doing that one thing so you can go into that one pigeonhole when you come out of university with your education level, right? Same reasoning behind it. And then the largest purchaser in the world, no matter how much we dislike the US military or the US military industrial complex, they have a little bit of money. Does anybody know what the budget for the Department of Defense in the US was last year?
4%, 5%?
So the US is the only country in the world that spends more of their GDP on the military than the next 10 countries combined. Right? $850 billion. Nearly $1 trillion they spend on the military. How many employees? You've got good information, Bogdan. How many employees do they have? That's full-time employees, not counting consultants and contractors and vendors.
I don't know. I would guess millions. No, something like 1 million.
2.8 million. Right? That's full-time employees. Yes, that includes soldiers, but they're still full-time employees. So this waterfall process, which wasn't called waterfall at the time in the 1950s, was adopted by the US military because they thought that this is a good way to build stuff. And it basically got enshrined in the way we do things. And it just became part of companies' procurement models. Right? Because if you can imagine if you've got $850 billion to spend, you buy a lot of stuff. A lot of vendors work for you. That you will be hard pushed to find a large consulting organization in the world that doesn't spend some amount of time working with the US military in one way, shape, or form. Therefore, they must comply with the procurement rules. So just spread everywhere. It's pretty horrible. And then we get a little bit more modern, and we started applying it to software, and it didn't go so well. Yeah, we didn't have a good time applying this model to software, because we kind of need to focus on a different thing. We need to move. The predictive management is based on knowing more at the beginning than we discover by doing it, right? So if you think about, if you were going to build, you bought a plot of land and you were going to build 300 houses. You've got 5 different plans for the houses. You know exactly how much materials make up each of the houses. You know how long it takes your people to build the house. You can just plan that. Yeah, that's a predictive plan. There might be some unknowns in, oh, stuff was delivered too early, stuff was delivered too late. How do I make sure I have the materials in the right place at the right time? Right? That you don't want to run out of nails. Yeah, those are definitely predictive things. So we create a long-term plan and we try and keep it on schedule and we maximize effort and assign and control the work. If there's a problem, we get in there and fix it. Right? We've all seen those shows where somebody's building something and then the expert comes in and solves the problem and fixes it. That's important. That hierarchy of job title, hierarchies in our organization, they're important in that predictive world. But we need something different when we know less at the beginning than we discover as we go, right? We need an empirical management practice. Set goals and vision, let people organize around it. I've got an interesting question. Does anybody know when the world's, in general, I'm not talking about a specific military, but the world's militaries realized that predictive management doesn't win wars? Does anybody know when the hammer, there's a very famous moment when the hammer dropped on that?
Was it the Battle of the Somme?
Oh, I didn't quite catch that.
Was it the Battle of the Somme?
Battle of the Somme. No, it was before that, I think, if my history doesn't suck. It was when Napoleon defeated the Prussian army. Napoleon swept across Europe and a lot of the world because he pushed responsibility down in his military to the people that were at the front to make the decisions. Every other military of the time, the sergeant had to send a runner to the lieutenant, who sent a runner to the major, who sent a runner to ask the general, who made a decision and then sent a runner back. And because Napoleon pushed responsibility down, changed the way the military functioned, the other side couldn't adapt quickly enough and they were dead by the time the runners got back. Because Napoleon's side was able to change much more quickly. Now, there are still militaries in the world that operate in command and control for sure, yeah. But most modern militaries take the learnings from that and don't operate a command and control model. They set goals and mission objectives, right? They train people in a multidiscipline of skills, right? They help remove obstacles in the path that this unit has to get to their objective. Give them training in the skills, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Yeah, so even the military often operates this way, but obviously not in the procurement world. So I have a very interesting article that some of you may have seen. I'm sure Bogdan's seen it. From that very big organization that I was talking about before. So the organization, the biggest organization in the world that understands that we need an empirical process and not a defined process, is actually the US Department of Defense. And just recently, in 2011, they realized that their procurement policies were screwing them over. For want of a better expression, they were screwing them over. They weren't getting things on time, right? It wasn't what they wanted. And they were hemorrhaging money all over the place. So they brought in Kent Beck, Jeff Sutherland, and a bunch of other Agile leaders of the time. and got them to rewrite the procurement rules. And those new procurement rules for the US Department of Defense went live in 2013. They mandated for both hardware and software iterative continuous delivery. Right, without quite saying it that way. Yeah, we're probably a lot of software folks here. You know what I mean by that, but they work with hardware as well. So even military ordnance has to be delivered in a continuous delivery, iterative manner. They might be longer iterations than we're used to in the software world. And they codified this idea in a white paper and sent it out to all of their procurement officers worldwide. So anybody who was in charge of purchasing from vendors. Because what they found was, when they changed the procurement rules to effectively mandate agility, every vendor immediately declared themselves to be agile. Oh, we're agile now. Right, that's where that the agile lies at the beginning. Yeah, 81% of all software teams in the world say that they're agile. What would you call that article? Boris, what might you call that? You're going to send out a white paper to all of your procurement officers worldwide. What would you call it?
False agility or something like that.
I think we should, the US military are not known for their tact and eloquence, right? So they just called it detecting agile bullshit. You can Google detecting agile BS and you will get a copy of that article. But I have, before you go Googling it, don't do it just now, right? Because I've got some questions for you. I think we've got 21 people. Can you do like a hands thing in this deficient tool? Is there a way to put your hand up?
Yep.
Can I find that here, or can people find that easily? Does everybody know how to do that? Oh, but
Everybody,
I
reactions, and there's everybody can add.
I have instructions, but I don't know what tool they're in. Is that the right tool? That might be some other tool. No, I think that's that really horrible tool called WebEx, which I have to use next week to teach a class, which I'm not going to be happy about. Right? I'm going to ask you. So that white paper codified a bunch of questions, right? And there's 6 questions that I think are very important for leadership in any organization. Right. So this is not necessarily at the team level. They had some other more detailed stuff for teams, but this is the leadership level. So what I'd like to do is I'd like everybody to raise their hand in Zoom. I don't know how that happens. I saw that Bogdan was able to do it. So if everybody can raise their hands, so that'll show me who's participating, and and who's fallen asleep, because I might be boring as well. Yeah. Clapping doesn't count, Bogdan. I'll also find out if people are following instructions too. So everybody raise your hand. We've only got 5 people who want to participate.
I think we can raise hands if we click on participants, at least in my view. I don't know if everybody has that kind of view. There is a raise hand, yes, no, go slower, go faster, and more.
Yeah, so use the raise hand, put your hand up, and it should stay up until you lower it.
Yeah, that's it.
But half of people participating. Come on, there's more of you there. Unless you've gone to make a cup of coffee, that's also possible. Right. This is the interactive part of the session. Well, we can go with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people. Okay. So we're gonna take note of that. Well, I don't have a pen. Yes, I do now. What's this pen thing that we speak of? So we got 11, right? So I'm gonna put 11 down. I have 6 questions that I think I actually agree with. They're from this article. And I agree that if you're able to say yes to all of these questions, there's probably a good chance that you're reasonably agile. If you were to say no to any of the questions, you're definitely not agile. Does that make sense? Yes to everything doesn't guarantee agility, but it's definitely a strong indicator. But no to anything. And you might disagree with some of the questions, but that's okay too. This is my party, so I get to make the questions. I can see Ogunjun's got his hand up as well. So I'm going to do each question, and I want you to put your hand down if your answer is no for your team or your organization. Think of it, it's a leadership question, right? Are teams delivering working software to at least some segment of real users every iteration, including the first, and gathering feedback? And I'm going to say real users is production, right? That's the word real in there means production. It has to be people who are actually using it for reals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, we've got 11 now, but somebody else put that. Oh, no, it's gone down again. This is an interesting one, right? Who's the biggest product team in the world that you can think of that is doing this positive?
Microsoft.
Which team? Which team, Tom?
Windows.
You are right. The Windows team has 4,500 software engineers, and they deliver to production on a daily basis. If you work for Microsoft and you have it's a little bit of an in thing, but the BGIT build, which is the internal build of Windows, you get daily updates from the dev branch of Windows. And that includes Satya, the CEO. So you as a developer working on the product know that the code you write today is running on the CEO's machine tomorrow, right? And you know if you break something, you break all of your colleagues inside of Microsoft. Right, that's daily builds. I like daily builds, right? Daily production, but I'm okay with once every iteration, right? I would accept that for a little bit. Did anybody say no? Oh, we're down to, that's about 9, I think. So if you're not doing that and you're calling what you're doing agile, I'm calling BS on that one. Right, that's a minimum requirement. Is there a product charter that lays out the strategic goals? Do all members of the team understand, and are they able to see how the work that they do on a daily basis contributes to the overall product charter? I'll let that sink in for a moment, see how many hands we've got left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to put down 9 because we've still got 9 left. Maybe that's, oh, no, we lost a couple. Remember, as soon as you say no to one question, keep your hand down. You don't put it back up again if you can answer true on the next one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, there's only 5 left now, Bogdan. That's interesting. I did this in a room of 500 people, and I had 2 people left at the end. So, are teams empowered to change their process based on what they learn? No, we're down to 3. Tom, you've still got your hand up. I'm going to try and get it down in a minute. Is feedback from users turned into concrete work items for sprint teams on timelines shorter than 1 month? So at least every month, if a user gives you feedback on what you've delivered, it gets into the product backlog. Whoa, we've only got 2 left. I don't know. I know a little bit about the stuff that Tom works on, so I'm not sure we'll be able to get his. He might be the last man standing here. We'll see. Are teams empowered to change their requirements based on feedback? Yeah, that's more difficult, isn't it? Oh, we've lost everybody now. Down to 0. I'm not even finished yet. There's 2 more. Oh no, one more. But the next one's usually the total killer. Right. Last one. Is the full ecosystem of your project agile? Agile programming teams followed by linear bureaucratic deployment is a failure. Nobody's left. I did this in Norway with 500 people in the room, and there was two people left at the end, and they worked on the same team. So it was in the room one team, right? And that was at NDC Oslo. That's a tech conference. It's really hard. But these things are not the North Star to reach for. These are the minimum. A usable working increment at the end of every iteration is a minimum. Getting feedback from our users, turning it into work that we do is a minimum. Looking at our process and adapting it to better fulfill the needs and deliver more value is a minimum. And that's what I think of these questions as quantifying. If you go look at the detecting agile BS, now I've depressed everybody. That always happens at this point, right? But if you go look at the article, they have a whole bunch of other stuff in there around what to ask. There's a really funny one that's asking teams, you know, how do you do testing? Wrong answers. What's testing? Right? That's one of the wrong answers they listed because they must get that answer a lot. And the other one is, this other team does testing. That's a wrong answer. Yeah, you can't have a working product if it's not been tested. And they just stick it in this nice little graph. I know the picture quality sucks, but I actually got this from a draft of that story. Right. So an interesting thing that I saw as well is small projects are only 32% more likely to be successful in moving towards agility. 32% doesn't sound like a lot, but if you were spending $1 million, I guarantee you 32%, you'd be quite happy with spending more in the right place. But large projects are 600% more likely. In this story, they count small as 50 or less people working on it. I feel like that's pretty big, right? But 50 or less, around 32%. Bigger than that, you can get up to 600% more likely to be successful. It's because the more people you have together, the more life sucks, right? The more painful it is to deliver software. Has anybody ever heard of these two things? I know Bogdan's nodding. I can feel his pain from here. It's radiating. Right? The SAFe, the Scaled Agile Framework, and Spotify. I'm gonna call Agile BS on these. Right? You can't take something that worked somewhere else and just use it and expect it to work. Right? It's not something you install. Mario P, are you owning up to that one?
You can try.
You can try. Yes, absolutely. And I am okay with trying. Right? But the article that's held up as the Spotify way was a point in time article from the Spotify folks to say, here's what we've been doing and here's where we got to. Nobody at Spotify is still doing what it says in that article. Nobody in Spotify was doing what it said in that article 3 months later, because they continuously adapted their process, continuously adapted it. And SAFe comes from a single instance where Dean Leafingwell was successful at implementing and changing an organization. Let's codify that model and let's start installing it more places. And I found something quite interesting. This is a comment on a memo, which I have a copy of, that went round in the US Air Force. This is the head of the US Air Force's IT technology division, highly discouraging the use of rigid prescriptive frameworks such as SAFe, and saying that SAFe isn't used in any successful commercial organizations. You'd be hard pushed to find somewhere where SAFe has actually been successful. And don't just take their word for it, because I know companies where they say SAFe's been successful, and I've been in later on, and yeah, not really. Not very successful at all. The organizations that have done really, really well at moving towards agility have built their own process by trying stuff, doing more of the things that work and less of the things that don't. And every one of those organizations has come up with a completely different and unique way to solve their problems. Which is why Google doesn't look like Microsoft, doesn't look like Facebook, doesn't look like Twitter, doesn't look like LinkedIn. They don't look the same. They don't have the same structures. They don't have the same job titles, but they're all agile or some way down that journey. You got to have the obligatory cat riding a unicorn with a rainbow. Agile and DevOps are not going to solve your problem, right? Your problem's going to still be there when you try and use Agile or DevOps practices. But it will make the dysfunctional behaviors in your organization heavily transparent, which is why it's hard, you know, because you do Scrum, right? We're doing Scrum, and then, oh, but this bit's really hard because of something that happens in the organization or some rule that we can't change. That's transparency. Changing Scrum to fit with your organization doesn't fix the problem. You still have that problem. It's just now hidden. It's not transparent. Same with DevOps practices. Same with Kanban. Scrum's particularly good at enabling transparency, right? But there's lots of different choices there. Just so everybody knows, the national animal of Scotland is the unicorn. Just so everybody knows. I think I'm pretty happy with where we got to. Is there any questions on that? I know I kind of depress people with this one a little bit. Just think how happy you would have been if you'd had your hand up at the end. How do I turn off sharing in this thing? There we go.
I think everybody's still just, yeah, thinking it through.
Oh, yeah, thank you for whoever pasted. Oh, it's Boris. Sorry, Bogdan. Yeah. Thank you for putting that article in there. Yeah, and you got the 2019 one. You found the 2019 one, the production one. Yeah, the previous one was a draft, and the graphics aren't so good, and there's some spelling mistakes in it. But the that was the released version, is the latest one there.
And the point goes through anyhow. That's the point.
So I actually every customer I work with now, I email this document to all their entire leadership team. I just send, you know, usually we're having a chat over Teams or something, and I just say, oh, did you know about this detecting Agile BS article. No, 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 no. And I just send it to them. Because it just, when you read those questions, and this paper is designed for their level of people, these procurement officers, people buying stuff. That's why I like it. Is this a different one you found? Oh yeah, the memo. Cool. Yeah, it definitely got leaked. And so they had to put it up anyway, which is awesome. Yeah, stop using safe. They had, because of that memo, they had to do that presentation that, that I had the slide from. It was funny because I was commenting on it online, and somebody just replied to me and said, do you want the memo and the slide and stuff? And I'm like, yeah. So they sent it to me.
But then later they had to pull it down, I understand.
They did, but it's still up. You can't take stuff off the internet. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, once it's up there forever.
You'd think even the military would be able to take stuff down, but they can't.
Okay, so crew, any questions, comments? Martin, how about a joke to lift up the mood? I said we are all a bit depressed for living in the world of the Agile BS.
Yeah, well, most of my customers are in that world. What's an uplifting thing? We could talk about Luddites. No, let's you pick the topics, Bogdan.
Yeah, no, okay. Promise next time I'll pick a better one. The positive one, yeah.
Yeah.
But
how to detect Agile happiness?
Yeah, well, and then we'll again be negative, because if you ask the 6 questions, I suppose you'll kill us by the 3rd as well. So joke aside, thank you really much, really, Martin, for sharing with us. I, as said, really enjoy your way of thinking, your way of presenting, and that's why we wanted to share this with the community here. And it was a real pleasure, as always, listening to you. And thank you again. Next week, we will actually have a bit of a DevOps meetup together with DevOps Zagreb meetup with Anna and Ognjen. And maybe we'll manage to squeeze some of the good practices and how to get away from the terrible situation that we are left in today.
Well, you get 3 DevOps MVPs on here.
I know, but next time we'll have 2 or 3. You're always invited to join. You're now, stamped as a member of
I will
Scrum
now
Wednesdays.
constantly get emails about the future events.
I think there's a mute button somewhere.
I joined. I was in Saudi Arabia for like a month doing some training, and I joined the Saudi Arabian board game meetup. I still get emails. I still get emails from it. So are there any questions? Because I still have time to hang out with you guys.
Just wondering if you had any advice on how to solve the problems people are having answering yes to those questions.
Yeah, hard work and stress is not gray hairs is normally how that happens. So the 2 big things I see organizations struggle with, the first one is getting a usable increment by the end of the sprint, right? That seems to be a massive struggle for teams. I quite often I run a workshop with teams, where I just encourage them, get everybody together who has a say in whether your software releases, right? So you've got the team members that build it, the person in QA that approves it, I don't know, whoever else, doesn't matter. Just get all the people together who have a yay, nay on whether your software releases, and then give them a big stack of Post-its, or use Mural, yeah, but give them a big stack of Post-its, and say, write down everything that has to be true in order for our software to hit production. Right, get all those Post-its on the board, do a dedupe. You can do a bunch of exercises around that to get more things on that list. But you want that list to reflect what it means to actually release your software, like what actually has to be true. And then do an exercise on what can you do now and what can't you do now. Right, so effectively, you're creating your definition of done, but you're creating it based on what you as your team can achieve. And then everything that's left over that you can't achieve now, there's your next 20 retrospectives, figuring out how do I move some of those things over to that other column of we can do it. Right? I just worked with a team where we did that, and one of the things they couldn't put over there was unit tests. Yeah. Sometimes software is built in a way that just makes it super difficult to create automation. So they may have a lot of work to figure out how do we get that over in the automation side. Right? How do we get that as part of our definition of done so that we can do this every sprint? Because you still have to do all the work. It's just how quickly you can do it. One of the examples that I thought was super awesome, Anna and Ogden can talk about how it happened next time. So there's thing you can hold them for that. The Azure DevOps team at Microsoft, when they started their Agile journey, they were doing waterfall. They were doing 2-yearly releases, and their this gentleman Brian Harry, he called it what I think he called it the zero build or the null build. He said they had all these hoops to go through to release their software, right? So they had to, legal compliance, and I don't know, it took ages, and certification and documentation and all kinds of things. And he would, after doing a build and getting everything shipped, so you've shipped the product, take the same code, build it again, so all of that code passed all the way to production because you just released that version. Take the same code and build it again and see how long it takes you to ship it. That's the crap you don't need, is that process. And for that team, it was, I think it was 6 or 8 weeks. That's from a known good version of code to getting it shipped with 6 to 8 weeks because of all the compliance stuff in between. There's a whole bunch of stuff to go fix. Yeah, on your pipeline. So that was getting working software was one. And the other one is building the right thing. I don't understand why businesses seem to be incapable of figuring out how to spend their money properly, but they do. You're on mute, Anna, if you were talking to us. No, okay. They seem to be totally incapable of figuring out what they should be spending their money on, and I've really never understood that. Whenever I spend money, right? If I just bought a new laptop, right? I went and I researched a bunch of laptops. I looked at the different. I don't really know anything about processors, right? But I looked at the different capabilities that are available, the different graphics cards that were in the laptops, what the screens were like, touch screen, blah, blah, blah. I just looked at a bunch of machines and figured out what I'm going to spend my money on. When I buy a new TV, I do exactly the same thing. I go research what it is I'm going to spend my money on, and I figure out where it's best spent. I would hope many of you do the same, right? That you don't just go down to your local store and say to the salesman, "Hi, I'm your local idiot. Please sell me the most useless, shittiest, most expensive TV." Right? Because that's what will happen if you just walk in with no knowledge whatsoever. That's what happens to my gran when she goes shopping, right? So why do businesses do that with their money, buying software or building software? They're spending money, they're investing it in their future. Why don't they understand? Why don't they take the time to understand what they're spending the money on? It's because we're all magical wizards and they don't understand what we do. Right? And because it's this wizardly magic, it's not, right? We know it's not magic wizard stuff. I think there's a onus on businesses to really understand what it is they're buying, as well as us to build something that actually works. But we are in 100% control of building what works, right? So focus on that first, because we can control it, and then help your business figure out how to build the right thing. And if you need help with that, then, you know, Bogdan, Anna, Bogdan can all help you with that. And they're all local. Did any questions come in while I was yammering?
We have one, or we have actually a thank you in the chat. And again, that's what you've been talking about, the overcoming of the overall BS. But
I was just going to say, Alexander was asking for a happy ending, but he didn't pay me enough for that. That was a bad joke, sorry.
to the best kind.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Bogdan?
No idea. Mind went blank. No, anyhow, and it's interesting. Sorry, we just got also another one. Martin, do you have any experiences with the telecoms?
Little bit, not too much. I worked with Vodafone in Ghana, and another telcomy / e-banky type org down there. But I haven't really worked with a lot of telecoms in Europe at all. Mostly medical, defense, and consulting organizations. So not super much.
Actually, one question. Sorry,
I did want to add something first, but write down your question because you'll forget. Everybody always asks, do you have experience with XYZ industry? Right. I was a DevOps consultant in the US. I had 80 customers in 3 years. I've been consulting for 7 years in all of, well, based in the UK, but traveling all over the world. I've worked with companies in almost every sector, and everybody has exactly the same problems, right? It doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter what you think your problems are. They're the same as everybody else's problems. Whether you're, you know, there's this misunderstanding that, oh, Microsoft is a software company, or you know, so they can do things differently. No, they're just biting the bullet and doing the job. They were in exactly the same place that everybody else was 10 years ago, right? They were doing waterfall and building bad software and having problems, right? They were just doing it on a much bigger scale than the rest of us, but they had exactly the same problems. So was Google, so was Apple, right? All the problem, there's nothing new. I saw Anna nodding there. Every time we go to customers, they say, oh, our industry's special. We have this problem. And we're like, yes, so everybody has that problem.
And it's difficult and you don't understand it, and we can't do it the way you are describing or whatever. It's exactly as you describe.
Yep, everybody has the same story. It doesn't matter what they do. Doesn't matter what they do.
And when you start getting to the basics, like, okay, show me your requirements or your acceptance criteria or things like that. Oh, we don't use that.
Yeah. Or here's the 500-page book written in blood on human skin that you have to read. Yeah, you're like, no. It's always the same. Bogdan, did you write down your question?
No, actually, this time it's stuck. So just and that's generally an open question. How do you make sure that the change sticks? Because especially in the consultant world, you're on and off, and basically once you're off, you don't know if how the things will roll on from that point on. And systems tend towards entropy, generally speaking.
Yeah, so I would normally say if you're in the consultant world, you can't. Right? You can't make the change, you can't enforce the change, and you can't keep the change. Only the company can do that. Only the people in the company can do that, who are there full time, who are doing it in the day job, who are in the midst of it. So I would suggest if you are in that consulting space, or if you're not and you're hiring consultants to help you, you need people that are going to focus on increasing the agile mindset of the people that you have, helping them get better at understanding what the and understanding what they need to do. I do a talk on change, right, and change management, and the whole onus of it is that you as you as a business leader or somebody inside a business are the one that needs to own the change. Consultants can't own the change. They can only help you with it, make suggestions, right? But you have to live it. And if you don't understand why you're making the change, what are the fundamental principles that we're trying to achieve, you're not going to get anywhere. You're installing something, and that doesn't work for change. There's a question about, I think, about Nemesis. At least some good title. Nemesis is like that. That's the one of the board games over my shoulder. You might be interested. I painted it as well. I paint a lot of the miniatures, and I did paint Nemesis, although it came out a bit dark, so I might redo it. Thank you, Alexander, for that comment. I actually just painted Cthulhu Death May Die. That has much more interesting miniatures. Yeah. So if anybody finds a copy of the expansions for Battlestar Galactica, I will pay good money for it. But no, I don't think they exist. It's out of print.
There's I'll message you later.
Yes, I might need to get it in a foreign language, and then, well, foreign for me, different language, and then tape over the top or something. I've seen that.
Okay. So, any last Battlestar Galactica fan? Yeah, as well, but
Yep.
Also.
That's definitely a good one. I like Battlestar Galactica. That's actually the first game I ever bought, which is
really
weird. Yeah, I don't get me started. I'm just and I owned it for 4 years before I ever played it.
Okay.
But yeah, that was the first game I ever. Actually, so something you can't see that you might be interested in, if I do this, NDI, and then let me switch my thingamajig. If I do that, okay, that's not worked yet. I need to go change that to this, and then hello. That might work. Oh, I need to turn it on. That's what needs to happen. There we go. So it's not just the ones you can see. It goes all the way up to the top there. And then all the way down to the floor. And then I have some more over here, where I keep my little games. But all the really cool ones are up the top.
We'll have to do a Twilight Imperium, but that's like, I would say, a 2-day thing.
My copy is painted as well.
Oh.
I've been very bored in lockdown. Okay, that's in my defense, and I painted everything, including the 300 little ships in Twilight Imperium. I'm mental.
Uh,
Anna
today,
and Ogingen will attest to that.
today, two friends of mine posted in our Facebook group that they will gather to paint the figures, and if anyone wants to join them, they're
It
welcome.
is
So
it is good fun. It just takes a long time
yeah, and a steady hand.
and a steady hand. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, but you can still paint without a steady hand. It just doesn't look very good at the end.
Bye, Martin.
Very much.
I need to go. Nice to see you again.
It's awesome, as always, to see you, Anna. Hopefully, we'll get to Seattle next year.
Yeah. This year was like we are missing the crowd. We were missing the crowd actually.
I know the online summit's just not the same.
Yeah. Okay, and for the rest of you, I hope to see you next week on our DoD. A little bit of automation and talking about getting to done software, actually. But in Croatian, so Martin, if you can put some kind of translator on top of that, you are welcome.
I would need it. Sure. My Croatian is a little rusty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So bye, everyone.
Bye.
So then let me kill the recording.